Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the book club. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us a couple of seconds and we will tell you all about Jean-Charles Frémont.
Ooh. And we're back.
With a lower third.
And I held up the book just in case we needed a thumbnail for our video
Very
today.
Very smart. That was really good. Actually, do that again right in front of this image. Just hold still for a second.
Okay, I'll do that.
3, 2, 1, and.
Okay. Today we're talking about the chapter that we call Chapter 2. It's called First Grade. And this guy, John C. Frémont.
Because he's part of that chapter, isn't he?
He is.
Okay. So while we wait for folks to come in, why don't we do housekeeping? I will pour our wine. Today we're going to experience the La Katrina wine, the Chardonnay.
Chardonnay.
This is a second generation because it has the punt, but not the
name
printing.
on the label.
And as you can see, we've signed it. We'll talk about what we'll do with it at the end of the show. Oh, actually, that's my glass.
Okay. Is there poison in this one?
No, the gentleman's supposed to pour his glass first in case there's corkage.
Oh, corkage. We wouldn't want that.
No, we wouldn't. It's
All
supposed
right.
to be a pretty good Chardonnay.
So, housekeeping. Want some wine too. Today we have moderators in the house. Joel Lewicki, Man in the Barn, and Jimmy Fast are all here. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for showing up today.
And by the way, for those of you that are already on, make sure that sometime today you send a text message or a little message to those guys thanking them for their efforts. I think they do a really good job in managing our room and making it a much better place. So make sure you say thank you too.
Okay. Presentation today will be, again, Chapter 2, First Grade. And we'll follow that. I'm sorry, I'm losing it. And that will be followed by a Q&A related just to the chapter that we're discussing today. If you want to go outside of that with other questions, Toby's going to be here on Saturday to answer those.
Well, we're not quite sure yet, and I want to talk about that because I still have to hear back from
that's right.
instructor.
Right, right. He has a class that might conflict with that for this Saturday. But will be definitely here Tuesday. Super Chat is available. If you scroll down at the bottom, you'll see the grayed out $sign. And if you would like to participate with Super Chat, that will make your comment or question pop up to the top in a colored box. And we'll make sure to let everybody know that we appreciate you doing that.
Nice. Very nice. Housekeeping is done.
Okay.
So here's what we're going to talk about today. Forrest Fenn and the Thrill of the Chase.
And look at that gold.
Color, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's gold. A color of gold.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice. Very Chardonnay-y.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your average Chardonnay.
Kind of a classic Chardonnay.
And there's no black fly in it, so hooray!
Okay, so you want to take off, start the discussion, and we'll go together. By the way, for those of you that do have the book, this is the chapter we're discussing right here. Okay, we call it Chapter 2. Fenn didn't number the chapters in The Thrill of the Chase. We call it Chapter 2, First Grade.
They're just making fun of us.
Making fun of us?
I was just checking to see if we had any sound or issues or any video issues. Let us know, and we'll take care of that.
Okay.
So,
you got the stage.
I do? What was I doing?
You're starting the discussion.
I'm starting the discussion. All right. So
wait a minute. I've actually... Yeah, go ahead, start the discussion. We'll cover everything at the end.
So everybody open up your books to page 16. And as we discussed last week, it's right after the page with the large font that's sort of a lead-in to Fenn's memoirs. And of course, he's starting with his very first memory, which is First Grade. First Grade. And it has a picture of his father when he was a younger man, Mr. Fenn, the principal. And you see, it says First Grade, Lanier School?
Lanier.
Linear?
Linear.
Linear school. And the postmark reads Monday, 16 September 1936, page 16.
What's interesting, of course, is 16th September was actually a Wednesday. So,
Well,
like all the other postmarks, it's
right.
incorrect.
Right, but it does give us a time
Yeah.
for the setting for the story.
Fenn would have been 6 years old.
And the first paragraph, he just talks about his father getting a promotion from being a teacher to being the principal of the school. And then we go on into paragraph number 2.
So let me read that for you. Page 16, paragraph 2. But I can't say the sign didn't make a difference, referring to the sign in the parking lot that indicated his father's parking spot. But I can't say the sign didn't make a difference in my life, because it did. No one else had a sign, so it was easy to notice, and I used to point it out to all the kids. There was this one guy, John Charles whatever, who didn't like me or the sign much. He told my friend Billy Joe Ray, which I've always thought was an interesting three-person name.
Kind of a Texan thing.
Yeah, Billy Joe Ray, that he was going to beat me up just so he could see how high I'd bounce. Sometimes John Charles would bring a little jar of green olives to school and wave that thing in my face. Can you imagine that? It was one of those long, thin jars with a green lid, and the olives looked like they were placed in there one at a time. What was all that about anyway? So if you do any research on Fenn's book, you're going to find out about John Charles whatever. And why don't you go ahead and tell them what you discovered, and do you want to read it?
Well, let's see. We were going to talk about first. I was just going to give my little bit of analysis on John Charles.
Yeah, do that first.
Fenn brings up John Charles whatever. No last name is given. Did he forget the name, or is he referring to John Charles Fremont or Fremont, because his name was pronounced 2 different ways? John Charles Fremont was illegitimate, so again, no last name. So is he pointing us to John Charles Fremont with that comment?
It could be one of the aberrations around the edges that we'd have to look at. Now, the olive jar is, of course, more obvious because it ends up that not necessarily that olive jar, unless he stole it from John Charles, whatever. but it ends up more prominent in the rest of the Fenn treasure story. So a little bit about Fremont. He was born the illegitimate child of a school teacher whose name was Anne Beverly Whiting, and she was the daughter of a socially prominent Virginia plantation owner.
The dad was the school teacher.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was French-Canadian immigrant school teacher. In fact, he was hired as a tutor for Anne.
That's right.
And that's how they met.
That's how I got the two confused. So Anne had married Major John Pryor, who was another prominent Virginian, and then Pryor hired Fremont
to be her tutor.
To tutor her?
Because he was like 60. You know,
he was.
He was 60 and he married a 17-year-old.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was kind of a daddy thing going on there, but
Yeah,
you know, that's
apparently.
how it was back then. And he hired a tutor for her, and I'm sure he was trying to finish her so that she was more presentable to the
Virginia
society. Exactly.
Virginia society. So Anne eventually falls in love with Fremont, the tutor. They run away together, and they have their son, John Charles, out of wedlock in Georgia.
They had both actually, Pryor and Anne had both petitioned for divorce, but it was not granted. So she couldn't marry John Charles' father. Charles.
Was it a Catholic wedding?
The government, the Senate, I believe it said, denied them the divorce.
Wow.
And the grounds were, of course, you know, illegal fornication or whatever they called it at the time.
Well, there goes our monetization for this.
Well, you know, and back at that time, you actually had to have legal grounds to divorce somebody, and that was the petition from the major. He petitioned for the divorce under the grounds that she'd had illegal sex with somebody else, so give me a divorce from her. And she'd already run off, and she also wanted the divorce. So they both filed, and it was denied, so that's why they couldn't get married.
So Fremont himself was self-disciplined but grew up proud and reserved. He was a loner, restless loner, ready to prove himself. His lay in scientific documentations, publications, and maps based on expeditions. Of course, eventually went out to the American West, made it accessible for many Americans with his mapping, and he's the one that mapped the entire Oregon Trail for everyone. Let's see.
He had a really interesting life. He did a lot of exploring. He ran for president. He was a senator in California. He was a governor of Arizona. He really had a very interesting and
successful life.
Full life.
Yeah.
Successful for the most part. He actually died destitute because he'd lost a lot of his fortune towards the end of his life.
And doing
bad investments.
Oh, bad investments. Mm-hmm. The other thing that was interesting, one of the reasons we ended up in Lander, doing recon in Lander, Wyoming, was because that's in Fremont County, and there was an intersection between the Oregon Trail, which he traveled more than once, of course, and the Outlaw Trail, and it was very much near Lander, Wyoming. That's kind of the aberrations that we tracked to that location.
But you have to think about him being an illegitimate child, and he had to prove himself in society. He wanted to be a part of that, and he ended up marrying a woman who was very welcome in Washington, D.C. In fact, when he ran his campaign for president, she was better liked than he was.
So did he stay married to Anne?
That's his mother.
Oh, okay, all right. So I'm sorry, I could keep confusing the two. All right.
So yeah, I'm just pointing out that he was very ambitious partly because of where he came from. That he came from a disadvantaged beginning.
So doesn't that sound a little bit? So this is interesting because we're always talking about projection. Mm-hmm. Because your first reaction was that this might be a criticism of John Charles, right? The guy that wanted to beat up Fenn. But is there a possibility in all this that Fenn is relating to John Charles Fremont, who grew up disadvantaged out of a not necessarily that Fenn grew out of was born from out of wedlock, mm-hmm. but grew up disadvantaged, but went on to be a relatively great success. Mm-hmm. The difference, of course, is that Fenn's going to, unless he does something really silly, he's not going to die destitute, and he's going to leave a great deal to his family.
Right.
So maybe he could relate to that. What I never quite understood is why he remained angry at this John Charles. Well, now we know perhaps there was no John Charles.
Well, did you ever have somebody who picked on you that you still remember?
Yes.
I do too.
Yes.
That sticks out, right?
Lorenzo Garcia. And he was about 3 grades ahead of me, and he'd go looking for me at St. Anne's, beat the heck out of me, and then even worse, he was by the time I came back, he was the judge in my first divorce.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how bad it was. Now, I don't know if he remembered me. He actually treated me very fairly, I have to admit. But yeah, I did have one of those guys that wanted to see how high I could bounce. Mm-hmm. But at the same time...
And you remember him, you remember his name, you remember things about him.
Yeah. Who was yours?
Her name was Diane Grable. She lived a catty corner from my house, and she made my life miserable for most of middle school and high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she ever wave on an olive jar at you?
No olive jars, just gathering other girls together to conspire and gossip about me and all the terrible things I would do. And
so Fenn's youth sounds really interesting because it seems almost equally divided between the pleasure of the experiences he had with his family, whether it was traveling to Yellowstone and enjoying summers there, and watching his dad make progress as going from a school teacher to a principal of an elementary school, eventually to the principal of a high school, and I'm sure he went beyond that. Mm-hmm. So that's like 80% of his life, and then 20% of his life is represented in these stories like the John Charles stories, the guy who wanted to beat him up. Fenn never has struck me as the kind of guy that would allow himself to be beat up, but I know
he had an older brother, I'm sure, in the same school.
Yeah.
And his dad was principal, so I don't think the guy would have got away with it.
Exactly.
But let me ask you, now, your mom was a teacher in the same school that you attended.
By that time, I was at OLOG, Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Right, because she went back to work after your father passed, so you would have already been
I was 7th and 8th. It was before I went to seminary, so 7th and 8th grade.
So a little bit older than where he's at.
Yeah.
But how did it, and you said she had a sign where she parked her car?
They had a sign for her, and it was funny because she was an elementary school teacher, but they made a sign for her because she had to unload 4 kids every day. Us 4 kids.
Isn't that funny?
We weren't taking the school bus, so they made a sign so that we were close to the elementary school, and then we had to cross the street over to the junior high school. And they gave her a sign. The principal, of course, was a nun, and she was one of the few lay teachers in the school, but she had a sign.
Wow.
And
So she must have had some pull.
well, either that or she negotiated it into her teaching agreement, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how did that make you feel? Did you point it out to other kids and say, "Look at me, my mom's got a sign"?
No, it was really interesting because I didn't want the other kids to know that my mother was a teacher. Right? For me, it was like, I don't want them to know that. They're going to beat me up if they're, not that. I was at a Catholic school with uniforms. We weren't, we had our moments, but so I was quiet about it. I was quiet about the fact that I had mother and 3 siblings in the same school.
How do you think that Fenn felt when he was telling people, "Oh, my dad has a sign, and look at that, and isn't that cool? My dad's important. He's kind of a big deal."
Yeah, which is what you do when you have to, when in your own mind, you may not have been raised on the east side of Temple, because that's kind of how Temple is divided, right? So you were born on the west side. You're going to a school on the west side. Is that right? Let me see if I have that right. I think that's correct. And so you need to remind everybody. It's funny because it sounds like he had a middle class upbringing. So it's funny because you don't have to do that to other middle class people. You're middle class. And but Fenn was proud of himself. I mean, he was proud of himself as a youth, even though I think inside he tended to be concerned about his upbringing and how he was living, and the fact that he had to go shoot meadowlarks with his BB gun for dinner. I didn't have to shoot. I had dinner. My mother. I had dinner. I had clothing. I didn't have to shoot birds so that we could eat. So I think when my mother talks about her upbringing, which I would have called middle class, it was, she graduated from high school in, I think, just before the war started. And she talks about growing up in Santa Fe like a normal, well, I don't want to say normal, like a middle class person would talk about growing up. It wasn't country living, it wasn't rural living, it was city living. So I think she enjoyed that, and I didn't hear many complaints. She went to the same Catholic high school that my sister went to, so we were all Catholics.
Oh, and happy Ash Wednesday.
Happy Ash Wednesday.
All that good Lent stuff to you people. So shall we get into the olive jar?
Yeah, let's talk about the olive jar because it does play a part in the treasure, right?
Do you want to...
So let me read, did I read the...
Well, you have already read it from
I
the
have
book.
already. Why don't you go down to the CBC radio interview?
All right.
Where Fenn brings it up in 2013. Now, does he mention the olive jar in the... No, he doesn't. I was wondering if he mentioned it in the Lorraine Mills interview back in 2011.
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, let's just go with the CBC interview.
All right. CBC interview, as it happens. He was on telephone for a radio interview on March 5th, 2013. And Fenn said this: "I think that the person that's going to figure out the clues and go on to find the treasure is the kind of person that's not going to be able to keep it quiet. I think I will know. As a matter of fact, in the treasure chest, there's my autobiography, 20,000 words in a little olive jar that's protected from the elements. You know, if somebody finds that treasure chest 10,000 years from now, they'll be able to read that autobiography and know something about me and why I did these things." So that's, I believe, the first time we've really gotten to hear about the olive jar.
About the olive jar, yeah.
Moving on to August 8th, 2013, from Everything is Stories, another radio interview, is that right?
It was Everything is, yes. I keep thinking of On the Road with Charlie, which is a podcast, but Everything is Stories is radio.
Yes. Again, August 8th, 2013, Fenn said, "My autobiography is in the treasure chest. I put it in a little olive jar. I rolled it up, printed at Kinko's. I have to use a magnifying glass if I want to read it. The olive jar had a metal lid, and metal will rust. It's tin, and so I dipped it in hot wax to make it airtight and watertight. 10,000 years from now, that autobiography is going to be just like it is when I put it in there." So that number 10,000 years keeps popping up.
I mean, it's the 100, 1,000, 10,000 years that he uses as references for how long he wants that treasure to be hidden. The olive jar is the only time that I've heard him use 10,000. Most of the time I hear him use 100 or 1,000 years, but when he mentions the olive jar, it comes up with 10,000. One of the things about the green jar lid, we did a little research, that's Del Monte paints their jar lids green, and of course the green olives. But green, we did a show several months ago on green, and green is the one color in The Thrill of the Chase that is used the most often. Green olives, tea, one of the teas with Olga is green. One of his references about the jungle is green. So it's the one word that's used more often than any other color by itself in the book. You can find Yellowstone, of course, hundreds of times, but green is the most often used color in
and one of the expeditions that John Charles Fremont led was of the Green River.
Right, which is another reason we went up and headed in that. We do a chase after these things, don't we?
We try.
So, I liked this written response from Fenn.
Oh, and hey, Mary Green. There's another Green. Sorry.
Hi, Mary. Why don't you read this last one from Mysterious Writings?
All right. This is Questions with Forrest Fenn from Mysterious Writings on June 26, 2014. And this is Fenn's answer to the question that he was asked. When I was ready to put the olive jar that contained my autobiography and 2 of my hairs in the treasure chest, I studied the lid. It was made of tin-coated steel, which is not easily oxidized in air or water. Over time, those characteristics can break down. Although I am not ready to say the treasure is not in water, I certainly didn't want moisture to enter the jar. So I melted a chunk of microcrystalline wax to the point that it started smoking, which meant it was at its thinnest viscosity. Then I dipped the jar in the molten wax deep enough to cover the lid and part of the jar, and held it there for several seconds. I wanted the wax to seal the threads on both the lid and the jar, but I didn't want the heat to break the glass. After it cooled for a minute or so and the wax hardened, I repeated the process 2 times, increasing the wax thickness on the lid. The wax was petroleum-based and won't evaporate or deteriorate. When cold, it becomes brittle. That's why I wanted the threads on the lid and the jar clogged.
With the wax. Something, the 2 hairs on the treasure inside the jar. So I didn't realize there was a number. I'd never heard him say 2 hairs before. That, of course, is for the purposes of providing, I suppose, DNA analysis. And the conclusion we came to, one of the conclusions we came to about the possibility that he had hidden the treasure before 2010. After 2010, it would be obvious by the combination of the biography and the fact that he wrote it into a book, and the biography in the olive jar and the book would have been similar. It would have been easy to prove this was Forrest Fenn's treasure. And then if you had to, you could have done DNA analysis, not that it would have made any difference. One of the thoughts that we had is that the only time that the hair in the chest would have been of any value is if he had hidden the treasure long before he wrote the book, and had it been found, the biography may not have been enough, and the DNA, the hair that would have, the DNA that would have been derived from the hair in the chest could have identified it as his and his alone. So I just thought it was interesting. I don't know if it has any value after the book is written and after he's passed away.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think as an archaeologist, he would be excited to find something that contained DNA,
right,
like hair
right,
or something of that nature. What teeth, anything that would last, like that. But then I also think about, and this is maybe more of a woman's perspective than a man's, but a woman might keep a lock of hair from somebody she loved, her child or her husband or a boyfriend who's gone off to war, something like that. That was common, to keep a lock of hair as a memento, keepsake from somebody you love.
Didn't he at one point say that he put the hair in for DNA analysis?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Does anybody remember that?
If anybody remembers that, make a note so we can go back to it.
Because you've said it so many times, I don't know if it was you or him.
Yeah. That's why I was wondering. Did I just make that? I know the story. I mean, I know why I think it's there, but I don't know that he's ever said that it was for the purposes of DNA analysis. So, anything else on the green jar? The
olives? No, I think I'm done with the olives.
So, what's the connection?
Except for one thing. Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
What's the connection between John Charles, the angry kid who he didn't care for, waving the olive jar at him? Was that just the point, just to make a convenient place to work olive jar into the story? Possibly,
and I guess it's also a visual. You can feel that.
Yeah.
More, visceral. You can somebody waving something in your face, anything in your face, and after you just told them, I have this sign, my family is important, my dad is important, and then you're not important, I have olives. What? What does he say? Get it out of my face, but that doesn't even make any sense.
I love his response to it. His response is, what was that all about?
Right?
Anyway?
So,
what olive jars? Really?
That's what I'm kind of.
So I waved my dog back at him.
Yeah, but what I'm getting, the thing that that stood out to me a little bit, I don't know why, but that he describes the olives. So, you've got this much room in your book to talk about things, and yet you spend this much time talking about, it was one of those long, thin jars with a green lid, and the olives looked like they were placed in there one at a time. So you really get a good picture of it.
Of what it is exactly.
Yeah. Why? Why do we need a picture of that?
Aberrations. Aberrations around the edge. Okay, let's go on to page 17, paragraph 1.
All right, go ahead.
My father talks sometimes about another old lunch bucket woman. Her name was Ora May, and I knew her a little from the halls. She seemed happy enough with her way of barely getting by, but she was always hiding out and smoking cigarettes with no names on them. Being the school janitor was a big deal, and I suppose that's what she was. Page 16, paragraph 1. His promotion was a really big deal because he got his own parking spot in front near the door where he went in. So we got two big deals there.
Because I'm kind of a big deal.
Big deal.
Okay.
Every time you do that, I think of, what's her name, Sarah Palin.
All right, a big deal. You're supposed to, because she's kind of a big, she thinks she's kind of a big deal. Definition of lunch bucket, because I didn't know, I went ahead and looked that up, of relating to or possessing working class values or blue collar. Would you tell your story about lunch buckets?
Yeah, my father was the kind of father that when he was alive, he would make breakfast. He would get up early, get dressed, and he would make breakfast, a huge breakfast for himself every morning, and then he would make our lunches that we would take to school, St. Anne's Elementary School, and every once in a while he'd say, so we had what we called a boots room between the back of the kitchen,
Mudroom.
a mudroom, and the outside door. And so there was a table in there, and that's where he would put our lunch boxes. And every once in a while, he would say, "Your lunch buckets are in the boots room." And my mother would say, "They're not lunch buckets, they're lunch boxes." She would correct him. And he had an upbringing that started out difficult because his father was an immigrant, and they came to New Mexico expecting to build businesses. Now, over his life, like Fenn, he was a hard worker and he improved, but he grew up in a lunch bucket family, and she didn't. And she used to correct him that it's not a lunch bucket. Well, and I didn't. I had no sense. I actually didn't realize the difference until I read this part in the book. To her, they were lunch, not pails, not lunch buckets, but lunch boxes. Mine, in my case, had the Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger.
See, and now, when you tell me that, I can picture my own lunchbox, which had the Brady Bunch on it, and so it tells me something about your social status in life. If you were really poor, you might not have a lunchbox. You might bring a bag. You might have a sack that you used as many times until it fell apart, or you might get the free lunch from the school, free or reduced rate lunch from the school. And if you're upper class, you might not only have a fancy lunchbox with the latest and greatest characters on it and a new one every year,
right?
Because you would demand that as an upper class child, or you might just be in a private school where you partake of the hot lunch that the school provides every day as well. So it does tell me lunch bucket does kind of define your station in life, and I think that's why he's using it here.
Read this section that starts with "Fenn points out," because I think that's an important conclusion that you came to.
All right. Fenn points out that working for the school was important, whether it was as principal or janitor. This chapter illustrates that his father was considered a big fish in the small pond of a small town school, and Fenn attempted to capitalize on that, but only ended up attracting the attention of a bully. Fenn recalls particular people by name. His father is Mr. Fenn, his friend by his full name, Billy Joe Ray, and minor characters by first names or relationship only. It feels that John Charles is only remembered as being a bully with a jar of olives and a mother who cursed at him in public, or a May as a random school employee who undermined his father, the principal, making his father mad. Fenn also takes the opportunity to illustrate his parents' marriage as a partnership, although unequal because his mother wasn't much in a fight, but she was loyal to his father, and his father made her laugh. So it sounds like a happy marriage from a child's point of view.
I hadn't noticed the uniqueness of how he addresses the people that he cares about. And I was going to say versus the people that he doesn't care about. I don't mean it in a negative way. It's just that there are certain people in the book that are obviously important to him and therefore important to the story. And then there are people in the book that aren't important to him, but necessary to make a point. And that's why when all these secondary characters come out, I always think of them as the aberrations. Why am I talking about Ora May?
Right,
why is he talking about Ora
right.
May?
And cigarettes with no name.
Right. So all of those to me, since they are in terms of significance, not significant to him in comparison to his father, to his mother, to Skippy. I also noticed, of course, as you go through the book, that he has a higher, not that he's misogynistic, but that he always has a higher value of perception in men than he does with women.
And that's the social mores of the time.
Right, exactly. So for the number of times he mentions his father and Skippy, they become at some point uncountable. On the other hand, for the number of times he mentions his mother and his sister June, you can count them on one hand in the entire book. So, and I think it's reflected in the way that you said that he talks about people. So,
would you like to continue on with that analysis there? So this chapter is meant to be Fenn's earliest memory.
I want to save that because that's the
Okay.
entire chapter. Let me just read this part. Can I read this part from
Yeah, go ahead.
Everything is Stories? That's the interview, the one that you mentioned earlier. Everything is Stories.
Oh, the ending
Yeah,
part?
yes, yeah. Fenn said, in the Everything is Stories interview, 8/8/13, Fenn said, yeah, I have some advice. Read the book and then study the poem over and over. Read it over and over. Maybe even memorize it. And then go back and read the book again, looking for hints that are in the book that are going to help you with the clues that are in the poem. That's the best advice I can give. You have to find out. You have to learn where the first clue is. They get progressively easier after you discover where the first clue is. And I think the point that Shelley was making in this part of her analysis is what we said earlier. If you read the book, so you've read the poem, you've probably, like us, memorized the poem. And the reason I know is because every time somebody at the Denver Museum would stop and ask what we're doing, I'd recite the poem to them. So
He does. He gets his little soapbox out, stands on it, and he delivers the poem.
in a kind of Shakespearean fashion. As I have gone alone in there,
He does.
and with my treasures pulled.
And I always take a picture, because you always take pictures of me, so it's fair.
It's fair to get back at me at that point. So the point that we're trying to make is that if you're going to read the poem, which has the clues, and then take Fenn's advice, which he's made more than once, and read the book over and over again and look for hints in the book, we think that some of those hints are related to some of these aberrations, some of these stories that just stick out, that you wonder, as you read them. I remember the first time I read the book and I got to the John Charles olive jar story, and I had kind of the same reaction. What was that all about? So one of the things that we're going to recommend to you based on that is whenever you're reading through the book and you get to one of those stories that just kind of goes like, what was that all about? Start looking for hints. Maybe there's something in there that gives us some additional insight as to the meaning of the clues in the poem itself. So,
And I liked the last line. Read that again.
They get progressively easier after you discover where the first clue is.
I like that.
I like that too, because there's some sense that if we're having trouble finding the blaze, find out where the first clue is. And as you and I have experienced, boots on the ground makes all the difference. Get to the first clue, and then things start kind of popping into place. Not that half the time we have the tendency, of course, to make them pop into place.
To force it. And if you have to force it, it's probably not right. Because
yeah.
they should get progressively easier.
And that's kind of what happened in Lander. We took that trip up there, convinced about where the first clue was, took the canyon down, et cetera, and then after that we were forcing stuff. Forcing stuff. A Gypsy Kiss. Joey. We were forcing stuff into the poem, and that's when it started feeling bad. Now, I have to admit, we had a great time while we were there. It's a beautiful country. I wish I could have done more fishing, but the snow melt was so high. Even the guys at the sporting goods in the fishing store told us that they hadn't had a runoff that high in decades.
And then when we went up high, there was a billion mosquitoes.
Yeah. Speaking of
Amy,
mosquitoes,
was that Amy that was?
Yeah, Amy. If you want mosquitoes, go take the road
right?
from
Don't go
Sings
there.
Canyon. Go.
It was horrible. I stayed in the car. It was so bad.
But there's a fishing spot up there. What was the name of that creek? Do you remember?
I have to go back and look at it.
Roaring Fork.
Roaring Fork sounds right.
Or is that the one up in?
Oh, it sounds right.
There's a creek up there that leads into a lake whose name I can't remember. Where that creek dumps into that lake, you could walk across that creek, that mouth, where it dumps into the lake. You could walk across that on fish. That's how thick.
But that was how thick the mosquitoes were too.
Or the mosquitoes will carry you.
Oh.
Okay, so read your analysis of the chapter. I think that was really good. By the way, I want to point out that Shelley is putting a lot of work into these analyses. And at the end of all this, we're going to transform this into a book for her with her name on it, because I think it's going to become a really important document in terms of understanding Fenn and the books that he's written.
And a Gypsy's Kiss will add some additional, like a photographs,
things
graphs,
like that.
checklists, things like how to figure out, how to get to your solution, and a checklist for that, because we do have questions about that from viewers.
And this is that point that I'm always making about she's a great writer. Although other people say she's not only a great writer, but she's a great on camera. So.
Well, hey.
But this is 5 pages on the 2-page chapter. That's pretty impressive.
Well, not all of it's original content.
Well, but
some of it's Fenn's comments.
Okay, read this last section, which I thought was really good.
This chapter is meant to be Fenn's earliest memory, as we discussed. The opening postmark date is the 16th of September, 1936, which would give us a time period. To a young child, the most important things would be his family, friends, home, and school. Fenn summarizes these in the 2 pages that make up this chapter: his father and his father's job, his parents' marriage, his school, his friend, and his nemesis. What stands out are the mother of his nemesis and her bad language, and Ora May and the things she said, both of which upset his father. Fenn spends most of the time he talks about his father in this book, mentioning the things that upset or disappoint him. Perhaps Fenn feels this is the best way to describe a person and his values.
That was very good.
Words. He was illustrating hurtful words, how words can hurt us. The words that he said somehow hurt John Charles when he said, "Look what I have, my dad is important." It hurt John Charles. He's like, "Well, I have olives," and that's all he could come up with. And then his mom yelled at him and used words to hurt him, and Ora May used words to hurt his father. So he's really focusing on words and their power in this chapter, I think.
It was an amazing chapter for as short as it was. It was an amazing chapter. Mm-hmm. You done?
I am.
You did a great job on that. High five.
Oh. Hey, we got more wine. Woo! High five on wine.
Okay, so why don't you go through your close?
All right. Thank you so much for watching on Tuesday and giving us lots of thumbs ups. We appreciate that, because we do have a few people who like to come by and just give us the thumbs down. I don't know why, but that's psychology, right? So if you could give us a thumbs up.
This damn John Charles.
And give us like 10 times more thumbs ups than we have thumbs downs. That would make us feel great. We would be, noticed by YouTube and all of the other people in the world as wonderful. So please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel to receive notifications. Click on the bell. And check out our blog at agypsieskiss.com. Follow us on Instagram at _gypsies_kiss. We always put up announcements and things that are happening, and a few pictures now and then. gypsieskiss.tv is our YouTube channel. gypsieskiss.live to go to the live stream when we're in the middle of a live stream or just about to start. You can go there and just hang out like Joel Lewicki did today.
Did he?
Yeah, he was here early. He was hanging out. So.
And if it doesn't pop up, we're pretty good about being on time. We start precisely at 1 o'clock, and then it takes a few seconds for the stream to get through to you. If you don't see anything within a minute, refresh your screen. Sometimes, not sometimes, that'll help find the live stream. So the other thing too is, if you want to donate to our cause and to our efforts to bring quality content in terms of travel and equipment, you can donate to us at our paypal.me account. That's paypal.me/agypsieskiss. So if you open it up, you'll get this window.
And didn't you recently use some of that for our YouTube channel software?
I got some new software.
New equipment. Toby got a webcam. So
and a new microphone that we're going to be using on Saturday if we get to use it.
Yeah, and every time we think, like this solution isn't working for us because the audio is bad or the video is bad or we need something else to make it better, Toby usually spends money on that, and he's put a lot of investment into this channel. So every little bit that you can do to help, we appreciate. Not only that, but when you donate, when you become a moderator, when you make comments, when you become one of our loyal subscribers, you take ownership of this channel, and we appreciate that because it really has a lot of meaning to us that you care so much that you want to take ownership as well, and this becomes your channel. So thank you for doing that.
We like the idea that we're making a community out of this, and we don't want to be a community that's based on the existence of Shelley and Toby or a Gypsy's Kiss or Forrest Fenn. We want to make it a community based on the fact that we all have a common interest and that we respect each other's position on the various parts of this common interest.
And that we like wine.
And that we like, I'll drink today.
So now that the sentiment...
It's another excuse to drink wine.
Now that all the sentiments are out of the way.
So a couple of announcements. Shelley's Just the Facts comes out tomorrow at 1 o'clock. That's a video, not a live stream. Our expectation is, depending on what information I get in my class, and we'll announce that both on the YouTube channel and our Instagram, is that on Tuesday, on Saturday at 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, we're going to have our Webcam Series. We're going to do this about once a month, we think. And it's designed, although you're all welcome to join us, it's designed for the folks that can't make our Tuesday, Thursday shows and have questions to ask. We're not going to do a presentation. We're simply going to have a conversation in the community because you'll be able to chat. And we'll answer, we'll have an open Q&A on that day to get any questions answered by the folks that can't make it to our Tuesday and Thursday show. And then we'd like you to tune in next Tuesday. And I think although it can change, I think the plan, did you send the questions to Finn?
I did.
Okay.
Today.
So next Tuesday, we're going to talk about the questions that we had you write in the comments. We'll show you the 6 questions that we ended up selecting. We may spend a little time talking about why we didn't taking people's names off, but why we didn't use particular questions, mostly for not following our recommendations. And then if we get answers from Forrest, we'll talk about Forrest answers. If not, I'll make some up and I'll tell you that.
What I think Forrest would have said.
This is what, yeah. If Forrest had answered this question, this is what I would have wanted him to say. Maybe we'll, so. Okay, let's switch over. We're ready for Q&A?
I think so. We're at the top, so we're ready to go. All right, and thank you for joining us. And as you see, we have Joel Lewicki.
Hey, Joel. Man in the Barn.
Man in the Barn. James Cruz, Jimmy Fast, Joey Perro, David Charles Davio, Paul McGinty. Corkage
Sean.
is totally made up. Sean NM.
It is, yeah. Corkage is totally made up. Yeah.
All right, here's our first question from Man in the Barn.
I want everybody to remind everybody, if you would, we're very grateful to Joel, Man in the Barn, Jimmy Fast, who consistently are here to make sure that we have a quality product in terms of moderation. So make sure that sometime during the day you send a little thank you note to them as well. We really appreciate their work. Tipsy bliss. It's getting progressively worse. Right? It used to be a Gypsy's Kiss, now it's just a Tipsy's bliss. We're just happy. Okay, first question. HEK, corkage is totally made up. No, there was some. If you've ever had somebody open a bottle of wine for you, that,
yeah.
But I did make up the word corkage. Yeah.
Oh.
Man in the Barn, HEK. First question: Why is it titled First Grade when only the first line is about the first grade? We, as you probably heard by now in Shelley's analysis, it was a way for Fenn to. Why you know the answer to this question? You already answered it. It's a way for Fenn to establish his baseline, his family, his school, his friends, his perception of the world around him, et cetera, et cetera.
And he's going on to continue to talk about his childhood, but this was his first memory, first grade, kind of, goes together. Yeah. He's not going to talk about when he was 3 because that doesn't really have any bearing on anything. Yeah. And a lot of people can't remember anything from when they were 3 unless they had a traumatic incident.
And the age of 6 is an important age because it's the point at which you start developing your social skills. up until that time, your social skills are being dominated by your relationship with your parents and
Right.
how you are around with them. Now you're getting in the outside world by going to school. So
And back then they didn't have kindergarten. They
Right.
they started
they
at
started
first grade.
in first grade.
Right.
There was no preschool.
Right.
There was no kindergarten.
Right.
They didn't have that opportunity. So I think it's a way to. I think the first grade is way to. Maybe the correct name should be first perceptions of the world around me. But I think it's easier to say first grade.
Well, yeah, it's colloquial
Yeah.
and simple. It gives you the picture.
Right. Exactly.
He's 6 years old, and here's what's going on at his school. I can picture that.
Hi, Sean and M. Joey.
James? B. Cross? Ready, set,
Joey,
go?
did you get your wine bottle? Not
Oh,
yet.
he just said...
UPS should arrive
UPS.
tomorrow. Good. Let's see.
Oh, and speaking of wine bottles,
Bill Cross.
isn't that pretty? Look at that. It's beautiful.
My daughter Sean, thank you. She didn't get that. Unfortunately, I just went a little.
And that's going to go up for sale later, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last night was fun, Eric. Well, I'm sure it was fun for you guys. We were actually trying to work, and you guys were just making fun of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope. So the concept. That's the concept. I hope that we'll get to implement that on Saturday. If not, it's going to be the following Saturday. I hadn't accommodated the fact that I had to be in a class this weekend. I've got to call into the instructor to determine whether or not I could make it. If I can, we'll let you know by Friday so that you can join
And
us.
Eric, I would like to just share that I was talking today with my family, and my daughter is going to be starting, well, she's already started a YouTube channel, but she's going to start posting weekly. And if any of you, or if you know anybody who's a fan of Weird Al Yankovic, that's what her channel is going to be about. And I was just talking about last night, we just did this quick thing. I wasn't wearing makeup. I was, not well lit. It was just, let's just do this. And I was trying to get across to her that sometimes you have to do that. When the news is hot, when Al is tweeting from the studio, you need to go live and you need to tell your viewers this is what's happening, because that's when it's important to them. So yeah, I will let you know more about that on Tuesday.
So it's funny because Shelley and I have known each other for a couple of years, and then suddenly this whole Weird Al Yankovic. I know who he is. I didn't know. I know who he is. Everybody knows who he is, but I didn't know there was a fan base. And she mentioned, somehow it ended up in the conversation. She said something, and I said something kind of funny in return. And she said, "Oh, no. He's very serious about his work." And she had like his whole biography worked out and how he writes and things like that. I'm going like, you know more about Al Yankovic than any 20 people I already know. So, but it's a thing in the Carney family, apparently.
Yeah, well, we're YouTube creators, and my daughter is getting started. So I'm going to talk to you more about that on Tuesday and supporting her channel. Thank you.
So B Cross, hey Bill, Journeyman, hey everybody. 70 in Missouri today. We're 65 today, but we've got rain. 57.
Rain is awesome. We needed it.
57 in NYC. Michael got message tracked. David Charles, the timestamp is not true. Yeah, that you'll find out that the postmarks and timestamps in all of Fenn's Thrill of the Chase are inaccurate. They're not exactly accurate, but there is a sense that they represent a time frame. They generally, are associated with a time period that we're talking about. First grade, 1936. That works out. The fascination with George. Yeah. He's never going to lose that fascination.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe he's just letting us know where his fascination began.
Let's see. AGK, Forrest Fenn picked up on because Dad was the principal. Yeah, picked upon. Yeah, that's pretty much what we agree with. But it didn't help that he was kind of a snarky kid anyway, it seems to me. He didn't, let's put it this way, Fenn didn't lack for self-confidence,
And you have to consider the middle child. He's going to bounce between being the oldest, being the youngest, and having those behaviors, displaying those behaviors of both.
And it was interesting because Skippy was, the guy's guy. He was big and, had a big personality and things like that. And June was just the adorable, like our little queen, our little princess. she was the adorable baby daughter, and so you're stuck in the middle. You don't have any one of those characteristics, so you have to make your own way. You know, you have to be. AGK, I don't see Fenn doing that sign even. Doing that, the sign even at that age. It seems the only one opinion he cared about was his family. True, that wasn't a question. Philip Jennings, I'm here late to the character. If this chapter covers the class photo, did you ever notice there's an extra name? We did notice it. We decided not to.
Casier?
Okay, I don't know if it's Casier.
Edard?
Yeah, one of the
Pat? Other. Skippy?
Yeah.
Skippy's, of course, his brother. Who is Edard and Casier?
Those are his friends that he grew up with. As a matter of fact, they're mentioned.
And are those their last names?
In the brain story, in the bridge story.
Are those their last names or first
No,
names?
First names.
Okay.
So we didn't pay much attention to the picture. We wanted to focus on the verbiage. Okay. So, but if you have a question about it, make a comment.
Or an insight.
One of these videos, yeah, or insight. Make a comment, and we'll add it to.
We're down here, and then we can shove it up a little bit. Let's push that up a little.
AGK, Forrest Fenn picked. Okay, Journeyman.
Jazz Winter says, I think he mentioned it in an interview about the hair, about there being only 2 hairs. Is that what we were?
I don't remember the 2 hairs. My question was whether he had mentioned the hair being placed
for DNA evidence,
right, in the jar
why he
for
did
the purpose of DNA analysis.
Why
in
did
case,
he?
Yeah,
why did he?
That's
put
the question
in?
I have. I don't remember hearing that. I don't know at this point. I don't know whether I actually made up that part, because it's my opinion that that's why it was placed there.
And they're talking about the cigarettes, and that people rolled their own cigarettes, which my grandfather did do. So I remembered that, and that is something that sticks out to me about my grandfather. So it could stick out to Fenn about a person that he knew when he was young, especially if his family didn't smoke at all, and he wouldn't have been exposed to it at home.
So he speaks more than just the olives. It's not a question. He speaks about the olive jar placed in it. I'm confident it's a reference to Gabion.
I don't know what that
Gibbon,
is.
maybe? Gibbon, the river that Madison.
Oh, part of the Madison?
The Madison changes names.
Reference to?
I think it's Gibbon. Oh no, it says Gabion. I don't know what that's a reference to.
Mules.
No name cigarettes, Prince Albert in the can. Probably very likely, because that's what they did back then. Is they rolled their own from a red can of Prince Albert.
And that's it's hypnotizing if you watch somebody do it and you've never seen it done before.
There is David Charles Davio says there is a keyword. Share the keyword with us. Oh, Jimmy Fast already asked. So I say scroll down.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions here.
Where did we go? Jimmy Fast.
Jimmy.
Where'd he go? Okay. David Charles. There we go. You're welcome. I don't know what I did, but you're welcome.
The brains. That's what it is. Jolly Green, Jimmy. AGK. Shelley. Forrest mentions that he has the mind of a 13-year-old, or is that 13-year-old mind is the same one he kept? Are you using this to look for hints in the book, and how?
No, I'm not. I haven't.
Well, he's more than once said that it's going to be easier for a child.
Yeah.
And I think so. May I respond to the question?
Sure.
Even though it was meant for you. So I think one of the things that you have to read what you have to do, not necessarily in terms of the hints specifically, but what you have to do is read the poem as Fenn recommends, and then read the book. And this is what I think he suggests to you when he talks about it's going to be much easier for a child. I've handed this book and the poem to children, and they look at me like I'm nuts, honestly. I have several grandchildren to whom I'm presenting this. They're bright grandchildren, science project kind of grandchildren, and they look at it and they read it, and I don't think it's there. Now, when you take a child out in the forest, you're going to find that they're going to be distracted by everything. right? They're not going to be focused on looking for a treasure. But I think what Fenn means by this, and perhaps your 13-year-old mind, the 13-year-old mind, a 6-year-old body, the 13-year-old mind in an 80-year-old body, is the way that you see things. And I think what that basically means is if you read this book without the complications of the Toby Eunice level of critical analysis, right? Because I think we can do that. Every once in a while, if I need to sleep, there's a hypnosis tape, not tape, it's on my iPod that I use, and whenever you use one of these hypnosis things to help you go to sleep or for whatever you're reason, they always start by asking you to take 3 deep breaths. And the purpose of taking those 3 deep breaths is to eliminate all the thoughts that are bouncing around. That's what they're trying to do. They do this in teaching the Oriental fighting arts as well. Get that out of your head. Focus on this alone without applying logicalness or artism to it. So you got 2 sides of your brain, the logical side and the artistic side, the equivalent. You have you're a sentient being as well as being, you're an emotional being as well as being a thinking being. And I think what Fenn's advice to us is go into this book without that level of analysis. Read it for what it's worth. And I think that's where that 13-year-old brain in either a 6-year-old body or an 8-year-old body, 80-year-old body comes into it. Look at it simply, without the complexities. Now, you may go back and read it a dozen times, but the first time you read it like you were an 80-year-old man, which I suppose is hard to do. Read it like you're an 80-year-old man with a 13-year-old mind, writing a book for a 6-year-old boy with a 13-year-old brain. So think about that.
6-year-old boy, huh?
6-year-old mind, because his sense of himself was that he was always older than his body, right? Even when he was 6, his head was 13. When he was 80, he likes to think his head was a teenager.
Well, now when you work with people as a therapist or a coach or whatever, you do have to go back to their childhood, because all of our patterns, everything that we become is formed in our childhood. We get it from our parents. So go back to, if you have any blocks, you go back to your childhood and discover where those blocks came from and how to get rid of those. So this could be a part of that as well, that you're completely formed by the time you're 13, and then you're ready. And again, that's like what bar mitzvah age as well. You are a man at 13, and then the Jewish people believed that as well. They had the celebrations, and you began to do the apprenticeship type work at that point in time. So historically, as well as mentally, we've found out that you're completely formed. All of your patterns are formed by the time you're 13. I think we dumb down our youth a little bit right now, because we want them to stay kids forever. Right,
yeah. Not us, man. We were 15, they just threw us out. They gave us 2 bandoleros, a big sombrero, and 2 big pistolas.
Back to the fun. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so hint, give us rosemary green. Let's see, great info.
I haven't shoved it up yet. You read this one. I'm going to shove it up there.
Yeah, go up. I'm following Jerry Perro. That's good. Timestamps, the factor or not. AGK, you skipped the first paragraph of the chapter. Any reason why? Well, we are picking, not necessarily skipping paragraphs. What Shelley has done, and what we've agreed that she would do, is find the paragraphs in the chapter that are relevant to what we're trying to accomplish. So there is no reason for us skipping one paragraph over another. Shelley made the choice that the one that best represents what the point that she wanted to make, which paragraph it is, etc., etc. You will find that we will continue to do that. We don't want to end up reading the book to you. You can do that on your own.
And this particular chapter, that first paragraph is a lead into the second chapter, to the second paragraph, which I think is the core.
Right. So. And I think it was kind of what we were trying to do with this series, because as you well know, I'm logical brained. That's the side of my brain that's most dominant. Shelley's just the opposite. She's although I don't mean to be she's irrational, but she's very relationship based. She's about emotions. And the reason I wanted her to do this analysis, well, there's two reasons. Number one, I don't write that much, she does. But I knew that her analysis of this work was not going to be based on logic and rationale. It was going to be based on relationships, emotions, things like that. And I think that's an important facet of what we're trying to do here.
And you've talked before about the timestamps, haven't you?
I have. There's a blog post. One of my early 2013 blog posts covers the timestamps.
None of them are correct.
Yeah.
They're not the right day of the week.
Oh, the one idiosyncrasy, one real weird idiosyncrasy, and I actually wrote Fenn about it, was the one that's in 1953, I think it was, and forgive me if it's not accurate, where he talks about the day he was married. And I did the calculation, and it turned out that the day he was actually married was a Sunday based on the timestamp. So I wrote him and I said, who gets married on a Sunday? And it wasn't quite like that, but and he wrote back and he said he wouldn't have either, but his Peggy's mother insisted on it. So
well, Cherie and Dustin got married on a Sunday.
Oh, they did?
Because it happened to be the 14th of February 2 years ago. It was a Sunday.
Concert was by the Monkees. Weird Al was the opening act.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, absolutely.
The Monkees. Okay, HK. The first grade chapter almost seems to be an allegory to Fenn's introduction to social standings, hence the first grade. Yeah, that's kind of the conclusion we came to. Joey, HK, I believe the olive jar description is a hint for boots on the ground.
The olive jar description.
The olive jar description.
That they're placed in there one at a time carefully. That you have Joey, to follow the clues one at a time carefully. You know, it stuck out to me too, but I wasn't quite sure why. But I think that's a good that's a
following
good
the clues
idea.
Consecutively, you got to do it one at a time.
Yeah.
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 Possibly. I just hadn't put any thought into it. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. But we think it's important that you guys are bringing up these ideas too, to share them with your
see what happens
with your peers.
In a yarn.
In a yarn. Hi, Shelley and Toby. Great show. Are you creating a special energy around Fenn's story too?
You are.
Oh, you are creating a special. Two questions. How often do you see Fenn, and will
you open a travel business
based on Fenn's story?
We talked about that when we were interviewed by Asahi TV, the Japanese.
Yeah, we thought the Japanese, when we did the interview with the Japanese television station Asahi, they kept telling us about how this whole treasure hunting thing was a big deal to the Japanese, and they would love to travel, and the Japanese would come here and want to figure out the Fenn story. So Shelley and I talked about it. We thought, like, we could set up a travel company, do like,
just Japanese like the Breaking Bad coach tours they take. We
have a pair of friends that we know from the film industry, the Salazars. Is that the Salazars or the Sandovals?
I'm not sure.
I think it's Salazars. And they have two daughters that are just beautiful, and but they bought the RV that was used in the making of the series Breaking Bad, and they transformed it into a little tour bus, and they actually have a little tour around Albuquerque called the Breaking Bad Tour that they take people in this RV that they bought.
Mm-hmm. I go to all the spots.
So
that you see in the show.
Thought about it, Yarna. Two questions: how often do you see Fenn? We don't see him that often.
No.
I think we've seen him.
We saw him November 2nd and May 18th at the events. Yeah. We see him at events.
Right. Yeah.
And then once last year, we actually made an appointment to go see him and talk with him.
We went and talked to him with him at his house and just kind of let him know. We thought it was fair to let him know what our plans were in terms of creating this channel. He was very open to it. But the only other times that we've seen him, like Shelley said, is at the various events at other people. I always make it a point to take a photo of him and Shelley.
We're not family, so yeah. I feel intrusive.
Like, I think there are people that see him a lot more often than we do.
Yeah, we're not close.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
we've talked to him, and he knows us, and that's as far as we'll go.
That's about it. AGK Gabion is a cage cylinder box filled with rocks, concrete, or something. Okay.
Oh, okay. I know what that is. Now what?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that you guys share this stuff on here, even if it's not a question.
Okay.
ATK.
A Gypsy Kiss.
Do you think the clues could be metaphors? Canyon isn't actually a canyon, but something else. We struggled with that. The answer to that question a lot. I think it's hard. I think you could make metaphors, although Lori James would probably argue with me on my definition of metaphors. But I think they could be representative of something other than canyon. What I start with is, to me, you know that we are big proponents of warm waters as they relate to the New Mexico Game and fishing regulations. So the first thing that you have to do is look at it from the literal. Warm waters are those. Canyon down is water goes downhill. That's the nature of water and gravity. So canyon down to me could mean a canyon down. So, until I've resolved those, then I'm not even going to look at the meta definitions. How will that work, Lori? The meta definitions of those phrases. I've got to do the first part first, and we're far from having completed that.
I'd like to chip in on that. So Dan, we did a video in January where we talked about the riddle in the poem and how you write a poem with a riddle in it, and it inspired me that I would like to take the poem and look at it from every way of changing it, such as metaphor, simile, synecdoche, that's a hard word, metonymy, all of the different things that it suggested. And then I listened to Fenn say on Nightline and other places, simplify. So I'm like, okay, so simplify would mean a canyon is a canyon. That's what it tells me.
We deal with that question a lot. Sean N.M., the two hairs in the DNA mention is from the Huffington Post 9/17/13 article by Margie Goldsmith. Did he actually use, Sean, did he actually use the term DNA? Oh,
yeah. Did he say that he put it for the purpose of DNA? That's what we're looking for.
ATK, what? It's becoming a thing. What do you think, where to go?
10,000.
What do you think 10,000 means? In the context of years, I think that was what Fenn would like more than anything else. Now, the likelihood of it actually lasting 10,000 years is slim to none, and I think he was more realistic. When you look at human history, 10,000 years ago would have put us into the Neolithic. That's a big stretch of time, and we're starting to pull things. So I'm sure 10,000 years from now, as societies and cultures change and evolve, one of the things that we know about evolution is consistently rapid. So the good news and the bad news is we might be an amazing culture that isn't even interested in finding physical treasure by that time, or we may have blown ourselves to smithereens and not even exist on the planet. So 10,000 years is a big time, and I think he would happy to get 100, and I think he would be really happy to get 1,000. But I think 10,000 for him, because I've never heard him. That's why I'd never heard that before. Yeah. 10,000 would be unrealistic.
Well, I think that if you look back at what Fenn is interested in, archaeology, and say the Native American Indians who put food items into pots and then buried them, and now we've gone back and found these, and we can pull the seeds, and we can regrow foods and plants that haven't been grown in centuries, perhaps
at least centuries,
hundreds of years at least. Yeah. Gourds, amazing things. So to be able to send something to the future like that has got to be a real excitement for him. He did go to Pompeii, and he found that bottle, or they found, I don't know, from the story that I read, that he was involved in finding a bottle of wine, and that he got to taste it, and to be transported in time like that is something that fascinates Fenn, and I think it fascinates us all at some level. So that's what I'm getting from the 10,000, that he wanted to preserve that olive jar so that no longer, how long it sat there, somebody could make use of it and be excited that they found it, and he could be excited that he'd sent it forward in time.
What did they used to call those cylinders, the schools?
Time capsules.
Time capsules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the treasure chest is it isn't necessarily a time capsule, other than what is contained in the olive jar, which effectively is a time capsule.
Yes.
It is a capsule that contains his biography of his time on Earth, which is this period from 1930 to 2030.
Whenever.
So see if he lives 100 years. Plus, he has his hair, and they could take his hair, do DNA analysis, and they could find out about the people that lived during that time. So the time capsule, interestingly enough, is actually the olive jar.
Yes.
That's more like a time capsule that can move into the future than is the treasure. The treasure is the treasure.
And he relates it to something else in his life that he's pulling from time, from John Charles, that olive jar. He's carrying it forward 80 years and then putting it as a time capsule into a container that could be there for 10,000 years. Are we ready to move forward?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't see any other questions. Lots of comments. By the way, guys, I want to make sure that we let you know that when we post this too, there's a lot of really interesting information that other people have researched and put on here, and they're adding it to this conversation. So I want to make sure that you're aware when I post this. This will all disappear on YouTube when YouTube starts processing it to make it a final product. But I want you to know that we copy this chat and we put it on when we post the video to our blog. We also post the chat there if you want to go back and use it for a reference point. Eric Schmidt's complimenting Brian. Ooh, go back. What did Brian say?
Oh.
Brian.
Poppelman.
The circles in the school picture aren't complete circles. Seems strange. Brian, well done. AGK, is email good to reach? The best way to reach us is via email, Gypsy's Kiss
at gmail.
At gmail.com. Yeah. Now, I will tell you that because of the amount of email we get, there are times where I don't get to it. I try to get to it in the evenings, but give me a couple of days to get back to you.
Especially if it's the weekend and he's out fishing.
You will, yeah, you will hear back from me. Just give me a little time. I will get back to you. I will not ignore your emails. Circles of 2, 3, 1 lines. Man of the Barn. Okay, so make sure you get all this good info that people are providing. Timothy's got worked out some lat longs from the thing. Fenn is an emotional man. Interesting. No, I think that Fenn, if I were to do an analysis of, say, his Johari window, he's not analytical. He tends to move over to the left as either he's primarily a emotional guy more than a rational guy.
Well, men and that generation are going to be more tucked away with their emotions until they reach a certain age. And I think he's there. Yeah. He's got grandkids. So he's at, I think once you have grandchildren, and back me up on this because you do, you open up a little bit because you're not in charge of disciplining your children anymore. Now they're grandchildren. Now you get to have fun and spoil them and play with them and be emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, my children see me as a logical, rational automaton. My oldest daughter still thinks I don't have a heart. But my grandchildren think I'm the best
thing. You got 2 hearts, this one and that one.
But my grandchildren think I'm the best thing. That Grandpa Toby's the best thing that they know. And so one of the things that happens, as Shelley mentioned, is as you age, you move a little bit further over to the emotional side.
Well, and plus, as John Gray from the Mars and Venus books will tell you, as men age, their estrogen levels rise up. So they do become more emotional, and they are more open about their emotions. I don't know what that is.
So, Toby, consider yourself a cold cognitive and Shelley more of a hot cognitive. Yeah, she's pretty hot. Yeah, I'm sure her husband will agree with you. Let's see, Dan, what did you say that they had to retract?
We got a new watcher, Forrest Lovett.
Oh, hey, Forrest. Hey, Forrest, another Forrest, yeah. Dan Kirk, AGK, sorry to keep typing ATK because I'm also a fan of America's Test Kitchen. Oh, so it's not a Gypsy's Kiss?
Aw. But that's cute.
AGK, the only circles that matches Fenn is Kaser.
Uh-oh.
What?
Oh, my God. Just messages for you.
Oh, okay. Marbles coins, swap times go up.
Oh. No, that's it.
That's it. All right, guys. We're going to cut it off now because we've gone an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you very much for joining us today.
We had a lot of fun. I look forward to Thursdays, not only because of the wine.
Yay, wine.
And not only because I get to talk more. If you saw Tuesday's show, I wasn't talking much, but it's just, I enjoy the chat and all of the resources that we have in our community that you guys are willing to share with us. Like the whole conversation that we had here was amazing, and everything that you can add. What we really appreciate is when you provide information, but you give us the whole picture of where to find that citation, or like Eric Schmidt does, if we're looking for something and you provide that, that's great. But if you have something that you want to provide as an insight, some of you are holding back a little bit. You'll say, blah, 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 this. And then we're like, but we don't know where that came from or what that means. If you could give us a little bit more of your thinking on that, we would appreciate that. And everybody else would gain knowledge as well. And I think they would appreciate that as well.
I had somebody write me this last week and ask why if we were that serious about looking for the treasure, why we were sharing all this information. And in our position is the more we share, the more it's going to be discussed. The simple fact of the matter is, every time you guys ask me a question and it forces me to think about my solution, our solution, and what we're doing with it. So we think this conversation that people are having is going to be good for everybody. This treasure is not easy to find. It's not going to be one line in a chat that makes the difference. But we want to make this program not only this program, but our Tuesday program, one of the constant conversation, so that people do look at these things. You know, there was something that was expressed today and people are saying, wow, I didn't know that, or I didn't recognize that. We didn't either. So we're not, we're like you guys. We do the same kind of thing. Shelley is much better at doing this kind of relationship analysis than I am, because I'm coldly cognitive. And you're hot. But I think what all of this depends on is everybody entering the conversation and keeping it a conversation. You don't have to share your secrets. You don't have to share, what your solution is, but it always helps when everybody's talking about what it is, giving people the opportunity. And the other thing too is, if we do that, all of us get a little bit smarter. And I don't know if you've visited the forums at all. I'm not going to beat up on them, but I just feel like sometimes I'm not getting smarter when I'm there. I'm just seeing the same old conversations that deteriorate really quickly. I want to put this up so that we have a conversation that everybody can benefit by, in terms of the acquisition and the use of knowledge. So that's how we're going to keep continuing.
I want to address Brian Popelman. John Charles, whatever gets to John Charles Fremont, I agree with. How does Ora May not get to Ora May Washington, Queen of Tennis? Well, for two things I'm going to address. I don't believe the Ora May Queen of Tennis gets us any closer to the treasure. And two, Fenn does not focus on female characters as anything central to his themes. They're secondary. So a female character like Ora May, it just doesn't seem to add to the story unless it's something that she does, like using her words to hurt his father, or smoking cigarettes that she rolled herself, and that's maybe the first time he saw that happening.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, they're still talking about that. Okay. All right, guys.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, for all of your great comments.
I was going to say something at the end. Do you remember what it was?
Oh, we need to talk about
Tuesday.
this.
Oh. So this is another one of my daughter's pieces of art. We've had her
Sign.
Autograph it in gold, not gold leaf, but just gold
Sharpie.
If you would like this bottle to add to your collection, I saved the cork and the cover. I'll send you the empty bottle. The first person to donate $25, because it costs $15 to ship the darn thing. If you donate $25 to paypal.me/gypsieskiss, and you're the first one to do it, I'll send you the bottle. Okay, and you can have it as a souvenir.
And it's a beautiful blue bottle.
Yeah.
And who is that?
Those are the...
Is that the mother-in-law?
Yeah, that's the mother-in-law.
Oh, the mother-in-law wearing the large hat, like gold cup.
Like gold cup.
Hat, you know. So maybe that's where Sean got the idea, the gold cup hat.
Oh, good point. I hadn't thought about that. I'll have to ask her.
Yeah.
So, okay, Sue, I think that's it.
Maybe Pinot next week, maybe, or maybe the red blend. We'll see.
Hang on.
Pinot, they do make a Pinot. It's a green label.
How do you guys get these wines?
No, he just says maybe Pinot.
Oh.
Pinot Grigio.
Boom.
I'm not a fan of the Pinot Noir. So, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell. Check out our blog at gypsieskiss.com. Follow us on Instagram, @gypsieskiss, with the little underlines in between the words, @gypsieskiss.tv, @gypsieskiss.live to tune in when we're on our live stream.
I'm done.
I'm done too. And again, if you want the bottle, $25 to PayPal, and we'll send that out to you. Joey Perro bought the last bottle, and he's expecting it tomorrow by UPS.
Yep.
So we're excited to get to know our community in that way. All right. Thank you so much for watching and for commenting today. And for Gypsy's Kiss, the book club, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Look for us on Saturday, but we'll update you on Friday. And if we can't make it this weekend, then we'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.